now I'm recording.
Right.
The
Okay.
perception of the mic.
Right.
I mean, I'm comfortably lying on my chair, which is just saying, like, I'm not making commercial. Maybe I should put it out. But,
Yeah.
but I think these type of like gamer chair are a blessing for people that have to work in front of a computer for a long time. Like,
Yeah.
good back
Yeah.
support and everything.
Well, if it's good enough for Ferrari, it's good enough for you, right?
Exactly. Like, I it's like after these chair, I don't really feel like those like stress at the bottom when you have to sit on the office chair for a long time.
Yes.
Obviously, I still need to walk a bit so that I don't, become vegetables. But
Yeah. Very important.
Very important. And my watch does that for me. It always like reminds me, oh, go move.
Yeah.
Every hour, just like go move. I'm like, fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're talking about
we go back to
relationship.
reconnect. Yeah. And the point we left off last was dinner time or meal time. Yeah.
How to turn that into a relationship building event.
Yeah. If you think about, if you don't categorize it, it has to be your partner. It could be with anyone, a friend, a parent, whoever. And you go back to the basics of a conversation. What makes a good conversation? Well, to the person, a conversation that is good are one, topic that I'm interested. Two, a person who is also interested in the topic I'm interested. And have a good flow and protocol of listening and asking questions. And respectful expressions in the conversation. Now, it seems like all very self-explanatory.
It's not that easy.
Okay? To do all of that consistently over time requires some practice.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so I'm going to throw in the extra dimension for you just to think about it. When you talk to someone you don't know, you are normally a little bit more cautious, a little bit more reserved. You don't know how this person is going to react to certain type of opinions or whatever. So you, most of the time, if in doubt, you keep your mouth shut, just in case. This is not the same with people you know well.
Oh, yeah.
Especially those who you think you know well.
You feel close to. Yeah.
You think you know well.
You think you know well. Okay.
I need to emphasize on the word you think you know well.
Okay.
Because objectively speaking, if you think you know a person well, if I ask you a question about that person, you should be able to answer me with a lot of confidence. But more importantly, if I ask that person myself separate to you, I should get similar answers from that person. Is it true? Just a question. Is it always true? How often is it true?
I think it's never the case, though. I mean, not never, unless you're very if you ask me, because me and Alex, we love to do those sort of like question prompt so that we can both answer question about each other, right? And being together for quite a time now, I thought I would be, quite good with those. But the truth is that there's always things that I thought I know that I don't. And even for the one that I know, I don't know it enough to have a nuance or detailed answer. So because I do so many of them, and every time I thought, okay, well, last time we have learned so much about each other, this time I should ace it. And then there are still new things that comes out. And then there is the personal change over time, right? There are that. So I don't know. I never feel like after a while, like especially after a while of dating, I feel like I would never be so confident to say that I know someone well. I mean, I can say I know someone, but I won't say I know everything about that person, because just
Right.
that seems impossible to me.
Yes. And so if that's the basis of your premise
Mhm.
in having any conversation with anyone, there is a certain reserve floor about benefit of the doubt. Meaning that if that person says something and you think that they mean something
Mhm.
and it could trigger you, especially those situations, right?
Mhm.
For some emotional response or others, it kind of makes sense to just maybe seek clarification.
Mm.
And the simplest way is, oh, what do you mean by that? Okay.
Mm.
And they will elaborate. And you can either confirm or deny that you are right or wrong.
Mm.
Now, it's kind of normal for this to be between two relatively less close people.
Mm.
And it's quite a polite thing to ask, right?
If it's a professional situation, it always happen.
Right.
Yeah.
But what happens if it's someone you know really well? Do you necessarily really ask that question?
And I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
Right.
That is always no, really. Like you sort
Right.
of forgot to ask because you thought you didn't understand what they're saying.
So
Yeah.
you make an interpretation based on a number of things. History,
Mm.
things that happened in the past, you've been through, and you think that, okay, well, she's always like this or he's always like this, right?
Mm.
And sometimes you just write it off. You don't even pay notice to these things. So imagine in a conversation, how many times those passing comments would appear. How many times do you turn off on listening to those comments because you think you know it and therefore you can dismiss it? And if you deduct that off the total conversation, what do you have left? And how meaningful is that?
Mm.
And if it's not that meaningful, would you enjoy it? And if you don't enjoy it, would you have it? If you don't have it, would you actually talk?
Mm.
And if you don't talk, would you be motivated to talk next time?
Okay.
And so if that follows the trajectory of what I've just described, it explains most of the time why two people have nothing to talk about during mealtime,
Mm.
or just creating topic that is management related. You know, did you buy milk? Oh yeah, no, I didn't buy
Trivial.
milk.
Yeah.
Right. We're talking about managing life.
Mm.
So very often those topic creates a perception that isn't there anything else more interesting you have to talk about? But then the minute you think that, oh yeah, there's something interesting, well, but I think you're going to feel like that, so I don't want to talk about it.
Mm.
Okay. And then slowly but surely it goes into the Dead Sea. Okay. There's nothing there. There's no life because there's this fear.
Mhm.
There is a judgment. There is well, the thing that breaks relationship or creates a fault line in relationship often is a development of contempt. That there are certain things that I really despise in terms of a behavior or thought process that I don't think I can change.
Mm.
Okay. And let me just say something obvious, that no one is perfect.
Mm.
And the concept of perfection, unfortunately, exists in an imaginary place somewhere in our brain, always
Mm.
about somebody else, but never to ourselves. So there's an expectation that this person should.
Mm.
But we never ask the equivalent question to ourselves:
Can we do it?
can we,
Mm.
and should we?
Mm.
Even if we could, you know?
Fair.
So, and it's a very humbling way to actually check in.
Mm.
And I think that, to me at least, is helpful
Mm.
to reduce, not to eliminate, because I'm not perfect, okay? To reduce some of those not so helpful inside conversations inside my head. When, let's say, I'm having a conversation with my wife, okay? We've been around for 21 years. So Yeah. Sometimes we do run out of things to say.
Mhm.
Definitely, we don't talk as often as we should in terms of first year, second year. But that's quite normal. Okay.
Mhm.
But it doesn't mean that we have nothing to talk about. Now, I don't think the frequency and regularity and the complexity of topic necessarily needs to hit a certain number in order for you to feel, okay, that's harmony. No. In different stages of relationship, harmony could mean comfortably being silent and being content with being silent.
Yes.
Okay. But there's a big difference being content being silent or being awkward being silent, but too afraid to not be silent. There's a big difference. On the outside, it looks the same, but you can sense the body language. It's not the same.
Sense the atmosphere when someone tries to talk but not coming up with something, the nervousness, the anxiousness.
Right.
Yeah.
You can tell by the narratives, by the words they chose, by the tone of their voice. Is it an easy tone or is it a nervous tone? Is it an anxious tone? Okay. And then, so if you look at understanding all of that and you say, okay, well, I've got no problems with any of that. Then you say, well, what do we talk about? Well, it depends. If you really want to have a conversation with someone, you would first put yourself in that person's shoes and say, well, what does he or she would be interested in talking about? Well, it's very easy to find out if you don't know. And you just ask a general question. So what's been happening? It's a very open question. You can't get any more opening than that. Right?
Yeah.
And whatever the person chooses to speak at that time is the thing that actually occupies their mind.
So prompt them of speaking what they want to speak.
What they want to speak, and then you don't judge, even if it sounds boring to you, because, hey, you invited me to talk. I'm talking. What do you want? Right? If you judge, you must give me a category and say, Kevin, not that you want to know everything about what I wanted to do, but Kevin, what book have you been reading lately? If that's a topic that you're interested in. Now, bear in mind, I may not be interested in it, but since you asked me a specific question, I'll give you a specific answer. And I'll say, yeah, nothing much. Boom. Next. Right? There's a risk that you take with those kind of questioning, which is specific. But you have if you have an open question, then the risk is on you that I might want to talk about something that you may not be interested in. Okay. So how would you, are you willing to work with me? Are you willing to carry the conversation? What is your intention? Do you want to understand me?
But actually, that's what I'm interested to, if you don't mind me interrupting. So do you consciously go to the dinner table with the purpose of communication? And no, then is it you're talking about a habit then, I suppose, of not doing certain things. The reason why I'm asking this is because, like, for me, me and Alex both actually, like, we are both very we have a very low level of people energy. That's what we put it. That's how we put it. So even with each other, there's there is an amount of time, for me especially, actually, there's an amount of time that I can be around people and be attentive and communicating before my energy goes so low that my brain's like, okay, I want to shut off and live in a cave, right? So that's why when I listen to, and I do agree, like, when you communicate, like you say, we should try to rid ourselves of bias, we should clarify, we should try to let the other person speak, we should, like, withhold judgment, I think I agree with all that. And I think it's very important to communicate with that, even though, like, I've probably failed even more times than you do, considering my inexperience of it. But because of that, I think it is even more stressful and even more energy consuming to bring that to the dinner table. And the consequences of not doing that is killing future conversation, right? if you kill the, well, I'm not saying it's once and for all, but I do think it decreased the attractiveness of future conversation if, for example, if you're used to being ignored, if every time you talk, it's sort of our judgment. There are things that, I mean, I have done that to people that I love, that I don't like to listen to a certain topic. I just find it boring. And because of that, whenever I ask, how are you doing? Right. And then apparently that particular thing is on their mind, they would just not speak. And then end of conversation. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of, you create that like landmine for yourself because of previous mistake.
Right.
Which you wouldn't have known. And there's really no way to rectify it unless you ask, because you don't know what they don't share. And you can't just prompt every other topic. So it's hard to, it's sort of like, for me, I'm quite conscious every time when I am at the dinner table, I'm quite conscious about not messing that up. So that's why I asked you the question, like, if not with that intention, let me rephrase that. If you don't fully tune your mind to the communication mindset every time you go to the dinner table, how do you make sure that you don't do those mistakes that you just mentioned, like to withhold judgment and all that? Or is it something that you don't have to be doing with effort?
Well, if you're not used to it, definitely you have to do it with effort.
Obviously,
because it's a practice then, and it's more like a habit. It then builds up to a way of your being. Once it becomes second nature to you, then you don't have to spend as much time watching out for yourself, right? But the way I would describe it is, I don't mean that every time you go to the dinner table, you have to have a conscious narrative or objective of having a conversation to maintain relationship necessarily as a tool. But I would say, well, if not then when you have dinner with someone, how do you approach this dinner while you share that moment with someone? What is your intention? Is it purely just you sitting there and you don't really care much about how the other person might feel in your presence? Or do you actually care? So I'm okay either way. I'm not judging whether you should or should not. I'm just saying, do you? And if you do, well, how would you express that?
Okay.
Right. And so conversation is one of the way you can express it, and is something that we can do every single day. Doesn't provide necessarily a huge challenge. And here's the thing. I think the relationship between you and, let's say, Alex, is a different category, because you live with each other, you see each other every day. There are a whole lot of interactions, and versus someone you don't see every day. And so for those people, that's, less challenging in some degree, because, hey, you haven't caught up for a long time, or you haven't caught up for a while. It's easy for a new topic to come up that is, okay, yeah, what happened there, right? But for two people who are constantly interacting every day, would I expect you have new topics every time you have a mealtime? No, not really. But do you at least invite if they have? Right? Do you seem like you are in a presence that she feels comfortable to say something if she does have something to say?
I see what you mean there. Yeah.
Okay. So, and do you have the conversation to entertain yourself, or do you have the conversation with the objective of trying to understand her? Because if it's the latter, then it matters very little whether you enjoy the topic or not. It's more like trying to understand why the topic is interesting to her. So this goes into a very fundamental reason why two people maybe grow apart over time. We grow differently. Every day we experience different things, and even if you experience the exact same thing, you don't experience it the same.
Mhm.
You don't pay attention
Experience
to the same
differently.
thing,
Yeah.
right? You don't feel the same way. So over time, just like a tree, if you take a snapshot of two trees now, in 2 years' time, it's going to look completely different. Now, if you don't keep track of each other's growth, you're going to say, wow, you've changed. Well, I'm changing in front of your eyes. Haven't you noticed? Right?
It's like one day you
Well,
look, wow, you're fat now, or something like that.
right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, those are easier to manage because it's visible,
Mm,
but changes that are invisible are
mm,
far more difficult to decipher.
True.
And just like most things in life, it's easier to prevent than it is to fix, right? And therefore, and it's easier if something is already a habit than it is something you have to schedule to remember to do.
Mm,
So in a nutshell, these four pillars that I'm talking about and the way you maintain a balance is to work out a way of understanding the way you interact with these things, practice those things until it becomes a habit. So on the whole, it's much easier to habitually do those things consistently over time so that you maintain a relatively adequate balance
mm.
with ease, not to get anxious about, oh, today I forgot to do this. No, tomorrow I forgot to do that. Well, it is not easy to build up those series of habits, small ones,
Mm,
over time because it takes a conscious effort. I'm not here to, you know, uh, lecture to people how they should live. No,
mm,
it's difficult, even for me.
mm.
And it took me a long time. What I'm telling you now is not something that I learned at 25. No way, right? I had to make millions of mistakes and suffer through those to come up with some of the things that come up today and say,
Mm.
okay, well, this is how I think about it. No, it's layers and layers of journey over each other that
Mm.
over time, that if I took the time to introspect, that I got something out of it. Plus reading a lot of books and, watching other things.
Learning, yeah.
Yeah. And talking to people and sharing experiences and then trying those things out. Right. And this is really important. Really try those things out. See which one works for you and the people around you. And ultimately, you would find that you would have developed a way of being that you are most comfortable with, that represents the most optimal version of yourself at that point in time. When I say optimal, I don't want to use the word the best I can be. I just want to use the word optimal because I think it's an easier word to manage in terms of, assessing where you are. It's based on, well, how much can I give up in terms of my energy to devote myself to do this, that, and that without driving myself nuts, right? Because you can say, well, Kevin, I'm trying to do all the things, but it's driving me nuts. That's no good either, right?
Mm.
Because that's not what it's meant to do. So all of these things that we're talking about right now is not for you to say, I've got to do all of these tomorrow. No, it's first to build awareness that there's a series of options out there. There's a series of consequences of your action that you need to be aware of. That's all to begin with. Because once you are aware of it, it is only then that you can start noticing, observing, then realizing where you are.
Mm.
And once you realize where you are, that's a good position. What do I want to change from where I am?
Probably.
Or am I happy to stay with where I am? That's
Mm.
okay, personal choice, because if I stay, these are the consequences. But if I want those set of consequences, I got to move from where I am. Where to move? Okay, well, once you understand how you get there, maybe you have some clues what to change in order to get to another place. And most of the time, you look within yourself to find what you want in another person.
Mm.
And those that you find challenging, most likely other people would equally find challenging.
This was sharing helps.
Yeah. Sharing, knowing, sometimes knowing something doesn't change the fact, but
Oh yeah.
it changes the way you look at and react to the fact.
It gives you the tools to understand, and understanding,
Yes.
we're sort of retrospecting after, and knowing where you are right now gives you a plan to move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a very simple example about understanding how it changes, right? So let's say you know how to drive, right? So let's say we're both driving, and you're driving a 7-seater, and you've got your girlfriend and beside you, and then you have some relatives in your back seat, and I'm the guy with the BMW right next to your lane, and as we both approach the red light, I jam into your lane right in front of you just before the red light to be the first car, but I changed my lane. Sure, you weren't driving that fast, but you have to sudden brake.
Stop. Yeah.
And then everybody, you say, what happened? And then you're just furious,
Of course.
thinking I'm just another BMW driver, right? And you're about to get off the car, go to the back, get a spanner and knock on my windows and say, what the,
Road rage. Yeah.
Right? So let's say that happened. And then you, just as you felt the rush of anger to chase me, the light turns green and I sped away. Okay. And you felt the compelling need to chase me, horn me, flash the red, highlight beam at me, just to tell me of your dissatisfaction and your anger. Okay. So that's one scenario. And then the anger stays with you all day, and then cursing every single BMW driver in Hong Kong and the rest of the world. Okay. Versus another situation, same thing happened, except that this time you actually got off the car. You didn't go get a spanner, but you were so angry that you got off the car, rush to my window, and you knock on my window, saying, "What the hell just happened?" I looked out to you and I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. My wife just broke water in front of me, so I got to get her to the hospital. I'm really sorry." And then you say, "Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry. Look, do you want me to escort for you?" You probably would do something like that if you think that would help me. So same guy, same behavior. What happened in my car? If you didn't understand, one reaction. If you understood, another reaction. Did it change the fact that I jammed the road? No. Did it change the fact that everybody knocked out, sudden brake? No. Those are the facts. Did not change. But did they change your behavior? Yes. We probably become best friends afterwards. You become a godfather of my son. What is the difference? You understood. What is behind it? Once you understood it, it's an extra layer, extra dimension that you can now see a much clearer picture of what the truth is, what the fact is. So then my stance right now, talking to anyone, is I don't assume I understand. And the way I would try to improve my understanding is to let them talk. Maybe at some point they will reveal themselves enough for me to actually understand. And if I don't, I'll ask a question until I think I really understand.
Sure.
And most of the time, how do I know? If I'm really unsure, I'll say, let me just paraphrase what you just said to make sure I get what you mean. And I'll say, da, 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 da. And they say, yes, that's exactly what I mean. Then I know I understand. Now, of course, you don't do it for everything. You do it for things that are, you do it for things that are a little bit intriguing, a little bit sensitive, a little bit personal, a little bit more involving feelings, because it's harder to guess than something that is plainly in front of you. Did it happen or did it not happen? Okay. Something that involves judgment, something that involves, something subjective. And then from there, you glean into that person's thought process, ways of being, motivation, fears, habits. And that layers of understanding allows you to understand a much richer dimension of their life in many other aspects in that one conversation. But of course, you don't assume that what you understood is equally applicable to everything, but it gives you a basis, at least, to ask. Next time you see something, oh, that's strange. Why did you do that?
Mm.
And then layers and layers after that, you improve your real understanding of the person. And
That's
you would
how-
really,
yeah.
you really want to, you invest this time because this person is important to you. And the more important this person to you, it kind of makes sense to invest that kind of time, that kind of process, because it's for a much longer term reward.
Mm.
And ultimately, you will be able to sit content in silence because of this level of understanding over 20 odd years. Not in awkward silence, not knowing why they're silent.
You sort of feels like you understand. So wait a second first. Let me fix something
Sure,
here.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I was like, the table was shaking a bit, so I was trying to
Okay.
not have the shaker around me activated. Yeah.
Right. The human
Yeah.
shaker.
The
Yeah.
human shaker, essentially. Yeah, but I think the relationship that you're talking about, I mean, I think the first thought that it comes out of my mind, and if I understand what you say correctly, and I hope I do, knowing that like probably miss a bunch of nuance, which sort of happen every time I talk to you, she likes. Okay, I'll be honest. Like a lot of time when I talk to you and Alex or anyone, actually, I do feel like there are a bunch of missed nuance that I probably do not understand because I try to listen, and that maybe there are points that in the middle that will just sort of forget or didn't really understand, but have to move on because we don't want to interrupt every time there's something I don't understand, right? But at the end of the day, like but I hope at least for the point that you try to deliver, which is to not assume to, as from my understanding, to not assume to paraphrase, to actively listen and to make sure that you are actually trying your best to understand what the other persons are saying is pivotal to every conversation. Which the first thought that it comes up to me, if I understand that correctly, right, is how that is probably the best dating advice for everyone. Seriously, like, because the amount of, like, because one of my friends, I'm not going to name him, but he is not good at that, in the sense that not very experienced in talking with girls in general, and there are always like struggles for my friends to prolong a conversation, to make the conversation feels personal, which is what you want in a dating relation, in a date, right? You want to make that person feel like you're connected, you want to feel like we're mutually interested with each other. But then a lot of time it's not that easy to host because we have an agenda in the conversation. We want to achieve, we want to impress. And oftentimes that actually stops you from really understanding the person, which is what you're really there doing when you date, is to try to understand the other person. And if my experience is anything to go by, which is much shorter than what you have lived, is that like when you are actually listening to the other person and that person felt that they were being listened to, it oftentimes makes it just that much more better, the conversation, because you are always focusing on topics that you want to talk about, what they want to share, and that makes a good initial, that is how you start a relationship. But later on, maybe after you know more, you realize there are a lot of deal breakers and stuff like that. But at the very least, you would get a chance to know a person. And that, I think, regardless of what relationship you're in, on a date or friends or family, you should do really want to have the skills that you just talked about so that you communicate better. And it's one of those things that I wish I know better, and I know you talked about it yesterday, but like, it's one of those things that I wish I knew better beforehand. It's like, it's going to save a lot of headache out of misunderstanding. It's like, especially when with me and my mom, as we often misunderstood each other. Like, like how I speak in a quite authoritative way. I guess where I get that from, when my stepdad ever always say like it's like two tiger roaring at each other at home, and he's just there eating banana like a apes at the back. It's like, but like it's really pivotal, I think. And that leads me to a question, right? Because I think like you say, opening up the space, allowing the conversation to happen, it is quite important. It's actually quite useful too, because you sort of let the person speak, and even in the day-to-day dinner table situation, that letting that person offload any mental load, providing that you are in a position to receive them, or letting them speak what they want to say, sort of allows you to real-time monitor, or at least understand that person's growth and changes, and so that you don't grow apart. I think that is a good point. Is there any other but is it like always like that for you at the dinner table? Like, is it like always like comfort silence? Because I wouldn't imagine, like, after 21 years, right, with your wife, and I assume your son is there too. Is it always just a content silence, or is there like anything that you would like purposefully prepare yourself to live up the dining table, or is there any mindset that you will bring to the table other than to let the other person speak, or to listen? Or did I misunderstand that part?
No, you understand perfectly.
Uh-huh.
But if you ask me now, obviously, different stage of life.
Mhm.
I'm retired and I don't have the daily chores of modern life,
Mhm.
of making a living, managing a family, all of the stuff. So I can only qualify what I'm about to say as, you have to understand, at my stage of life, it is different than most people.
Mhm.
And I don't really suggest that you should be like me,
Mhm.
but I would share what I think might be useful in terms of my mindset. And
Mhm.
you can take reference to, that might be something I want to try.
That might work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what actually happened in my dinner table is, a series of comfortable silence,
Mhm.
but it's very circumstantial to my family.
Okay.
My son doesn't speak much generally.
Mhm.
I never taught him not to speak, but he kind of naturally is kind of like me. He doesn't really speak a lot.
Guess where he get it from, right?
So, but you see, like today,
Uh-huh.
I speak with you as if I'm just let out of prison.
Fair.
So it is not true that I don't like to speak. I like to speak on things that mean something to me.
Mm.
And when that's happened, I can't stop. However,
Mhm.
in the absence of that, I don't speak at all most of the time. I consume, I learn, I observe, I think, and those things in aggregate allows me, next time I speak, that I might have something new, something that is a product of all of those things. And then as I speak to someone else, I am also listening to myself. That is far more profound than I thought. I thought, well, if something's in me, then it's no point in speaking about it.
Mm.
Actually, it's not true. Actually, hearing yourself speak about something has a huge impact on me.
Okay.
Because,
Mhm.
you know, if you speak to yourself, let's say in front of the camera,
Mhm.
and later on you watch it and you listen to yourself speak, it is as if you are speaking to yourself outside of your body.
Mm.
Guess what? I think I understand that guy.
Okay.
And everybody has a need to be understood.
Okay.
And you don't always find that somebody who is not you, who is willing and able to really understand you.
So you're saying that like I suppose, dialogue
Mhm.
have helped facilitate a sense of understanding,
A feeling of being understood. Yes.
a feeling of being understood, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
And that is a good feeling, in the absence of a perfect person who is willing and able to spend a time and effort
Mhm.
and demonstrate their understanding of you with no other objective than to understand.
That's true. That is true. I understand what you're saying now.
And so in the dinner, the way I approach a dinner is I'm just going to enjoy my food. Okay. That's the
Fair.
primary approach, right?
That's important. That's
Yeah,
important.
because that would set your mind in the right place.
Respect for the chef too,
Yes,
Yeah.
you're there to enjoy. You're there to look. You look forward to it. God, it smells good, and God, it tastes good, and that's the primary basis for a good, sharing of a moment. So I don't demand that moment to have anything on top of that in order for that moment to be good. The moment is as good as it is if I'm there to enjoy the food and they're there to enjoy the food. And we're all enjoying the food. We're hungry. And okay, it tastes good. Even if nothing happens, and we do that in comfortable harmony, to me, that's a good dinner. Okay. Now,
True.
What is a comfortable harmony? All of us knowing there is nothing on each other's mind about each other that is creating some sort of disconnect or dissonance, an unsettled argument, a hidden agenda that I don't want to talk about, but I need to talk about sometime in the next few days. That is like a dead air hanging there that won't go away. And you see that written on the face of the other person or yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, things like that happen from time to time with everyone, anxiety, any sort of issues with your health or finances, work, relationships. It happens all the time. So if I were to suggest what is the baseline of something that may be helpful is don't worry about all those things. If you're going to have a dinner, just think about the food, okay? Think about your hunger. Get your mind in a nice anticipatory mindset to be sitting down just enjoying the food. There's nothing more complicated than that, okay? And this is a time where your approach, your mannerism, your body language signals comes into play. If you're relatively relaxed and people see you relax, whatever that is on their mind that they think they want to say, they're more likely to try than if they see some colors on your face that is obviously not a good time, right?
Just
so
that face.
Yeah. So, well, what can you do to indicate that you're in that? Well, a simple greeting, a smile, some comment that the food looks good. And just tell people that you're in a good mood. Okay? Now, if you're not in a good mood, which understandably, okay, fine. But you're not going to be like that all the time, hopefully.
Well, it's the span of that dinner maybe, but not all the time. Yeah.
So if you can, and if you do feel like that you're in a good mood, show it. That's what I'm asking. Show it. Make it obvious.
By complimenting, Yeah.
saying, oh, I'm so hungry. God, it tastes good, smells good. Just talk to yourself, even if they're not interested. Okay. And that will give off the right vibes, at least from you, out of all the people on the dinner table. Okay. It's not just you, I get it. But at least you made an effort to create the right vibes for the table. And whatever happens, well, let it happen. If you want to talk about something, talk about it. For example, the other day I was talking about, so I get on Omegle. I talked to you about that, right?
Yeah.
So I
Talking
met this
to random
guy.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. So I met this guy maybe about 7 months ago, who is a, original tribal kind of people from Canada.
Okay.
So
Indigenous
kind of
people.
Indigenous, correct.
Yeah, indigenous.
Thank you
people.
for the word.
Yeah.
Indigenous. And then 7 months ago, I met this guy. He was playing guitar, and that's how we met. We got connected, but he didn't know how to play. He was just fiddling around with it. I taught him some basic chords, and he found it interesting. We talked, and we laughed a lot, and we decided to stay in contact. And then once in a while, he'll message me and say, "Hey, do you want to come on and play some guitar?" I said, "Yes." So we've seen each other maybe 2 or 3 times. The 4th time, he asked me to join something, and then at the very last minute, he said, "I can't join. Sorry." And he said to me on the message, "Sorry, I'm overdosed."
Oh.
Okay. So, okay, fine. Then I haven't heard from him for a long time. Now, I'm the kind of person that I don't go bother people. Not because I don't care about them, but it's just not the way I am. Like, for a long time, you know my style, right? Normally, I'll wait for you guys to, wait for you guys to talk to me and say, "Hey, Kevin, haven't caught up with." Okay, great, let's catch up. I'm always keen for a catch up, but I want the other person to initiate because I don't want to impose myself. And people are a lot more busy than I am generally because I'm retired.
Well, you're
right?
retired, yes.
So, and then he reached out to me just about a month ago. And he called me, and I didn't recognize the number because he changed his phone number. So I didn't pick up the call. But then he uses message me, and, "Hey, this is, so-and-so." I said, "Oh, how have you been?" He said, "Oh, good." And then he sent me a load of messages, one after the other, just spilling his guts. And what he told me was, "You saved my life. I'm making thousands of dollars because of you. And I'm doing this and I'm doing that." And I said, "What was that about?" And so he called me again, and this time I picked up the phone, and because I know it's him, then he told me the story. And the story was, after he got overdosed, he was down for a while, and then, but he picked himself up, and he decided just to spend his time on guitar. Now, by the way, this guy is like 16 years old. He's in high school. And he played guitar, and he learned all by himself on YouTube, right? Just like I taught him, because I said I learned from YouTube. But he spent so much time, he actually got quite good at it. And he went back to school, and he started playing guitar in front of his friends. And a teacher noticed him. And he said, "Oh, you play really well. Would you be interested in teaching guitar in the school?" He said, "Okay, sure." What he didn't know was what he was going to get paid by teaching guitar. So he then later told me, he said, "I teach guitar, and every session they pay me $150. That's Canadian dollars.
Canadian dollars. Yeah.
Okay.
Lord.
And he does 2 sessions per day, 5 days a week. And then he said, "I've got so much money now, Kevin." I said, "Oh, okay." I didn't ask him how much. He then showed me the phone on his account balance. It's like $150,000. I said, and then that's why I asked him, is that you made all of that money just teaching guitar? He said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't get it. How much are they paying you?" So I didn't want to probe because I want to know how much he makes, but I couldn't believe that 7 months and 8 months worth of teaching guitar would have gotten him that amount of money.
Well,
and I was just,
no cost and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was just still, because $150 in, equivalent Canadian dollar terms is like 1,000 Hong Kong dollars for a couple of hours work for a guy who's 16 years old at school.
It's actually higher salary than me, at least.
Right. Think about it, right?
Say D2, actually. Yeah, it's 940 or 14 Hong Kong dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, he was thanking me. He said, "You saved my life because of that one meeting. I got into guitar, and I never would have done it without you." And so I was touched. I was just thank him for, saying these nice things. So I relayed this experience to my wife and my kid at the dinner table. So this is something I talked about. And then 1 month later, he called me again. He said, "Kevin, guess what?" I said, "What?" "I've just donated $2 million to my zone for building schools and road." And I said,
Where do you get
"Okay,
$2
well,
million?
where did you get $2 million from?"
I was like,
He said, "Well, after I talked to you last time, I invested all my money in crypto." I said, "Oh, okay."
dang.
So he bought a whole bunch of Chiba coins, and
Have a race, I
apparently
suppose.
he turned that into $2 million. I
Mhm.
said, "Are you locked into the profit now?" He said, yeah, it's all locked in, but I won't get paid out until I'm 18 years old. I said, "Okay, fair enough."
Mhm.
So, and he donated all that money to his village or his settlement
Mhm.
area because of lack of facilities and, poor roads and whatever. And here I am looking at this kid, 16 years old,
Mhm.
nothing to his name, living a very basic life with his indigenous people.
Mhm.
And he could have used this money to move to the city, live the high life, be different, be better, be superior. And that guy just inspired the hell out of me.
Mhm.
So I can't help but to bring another conversation back to the dinner table. So that creates, conversations because they don't understand. They wonder what happened. They feel amazing as well, that there will be such a person who is doing something like this, right? Not to say the amount of money that he makes, but what he uses the money for versus what he could have been using the money for.
Mhm.
And things like that. So do I do this every day? No. I only do it because I felt a compelling need to share something that I thought is quite beautiful,
Mhm.
that touches me. So I would say if someone were to ask me to suggest, what do you talk about? Talk to people about things that you really care about.
Mhm.
If you don't really care, you don't have to make up small talks. And you could invite other people to talk if they feel
True.
like talking. Okay? And if they don't feel like talking, then don't. Just settle into the meal, enjoy every morsel, chew slowly.
That's important. That was a a nice segue there. No,
And
but yeah,
yeah, go.
please, please. No, I was because I was saying like, yeah, I guess like if you have a sort of a daily ground like that to share your story and thoughts, then it makes it opens up the opportunity for communication. And I mean, for you have that amazing story to share, and maybe not doesn't have to be as amazing, but just what happened to you and you think is worthwhile to share.
Sometimes I share YouTube that I saw.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like amazing,
No,
amazing story.
no, but to me it's amazing.
Mm,
Sometimes I see a little clip from David Attenborough and I'll talk about it.
mm,
A toadfish, building a nest for the mating. I don't know if they're going to be interested, but I think, well, here's what I think. When you talk about something that means something to you,
mm,
your emotions come through.
mm.
You
Enthusiasm.
you become a storyteller
Mm,
about the things that you care. Your tone would be far flatter. Talk about things you don't care about, and you're just trying to make conversation.
mm,
So everyone, maybe unbeknownst to themselves, is the best storyteller in the world on the story that they care about, and only those.
mm,
I don't have to teach you how to tell a story if you're relating an experience that you find very unforgettable. You may not have attended a storytelling class, but recounting a personal experience that is memorable necessarily brings out that side of you, even if you don't want it. It will be compelling. It will be real. just like what we're doing now.
True. I mean, yes, but there's a assumption there that you need to have that an interesting life first in order for you to bring the value to the table. Because there is a, like, at least for me, like I mean, I'm not saying there's nothing interesting happening in my life, but or maybe it's just my personal preference of not sharing. But there's often a empty in my thought sometimes where I think of, oh, what is interesting for me to bring to the table, but and then I was like, oh, what is interesting today? What is interesting today? Oh, nothing. Boop. And then that dinner is gonna be more or less silent, or I'm relying on our residents like topic generator to continue the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Because she wants all things, like, which I like to hear from her, which is a fine dynamic. It's sometimes I do feel like, oh, maybe I'm not contributing as much to the conversation because of like I don't know if it is, maybe I'm not enthusiastic enough about what I do. I, mostly games, boxings, and YouTube videos about different science. Sure as hell not going to bring up physics just because I'm interested in it. I mean, I at least don't think it's a good thing to bring up, like, oh, today I saw a video about how neutron star is formed, and
Me too. Yeah, I'd love to
really,
talk about that. Yeah,
really,
yeah, nebulas, all of
yeah.
those things.
No, but because obviously with you, I will talk about it. Like, we're learner, but then there's a suitability of the topics, right? I mean, I can't bring that up with my mom. At least I don't feel comfortable doing so, because I feel like they will look at me as like, you know, I'm just trying to say, like, is there, like, maybe there is still like a suitability of a topic?
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's not difficult to find out
When
if you're
you
willing.
say it,
If
yeah,
you're willing to find out.
we're willing to find out. That's true.
Are you willing to find out? And after you found out, are you willing to let them lead?
What do you
Will
mean?
you
Sorry.
will you be the best listener? Will you be the most curious learner about what they want to talk about?
So that they
That-
reciprocate.
Yes, that makes the
Ah.
huge. Well, they may not reciprocate when you talk about things you want to talk about, but you see, in a relationship, sometimes when I say we, some of us, think that we need to measure it by back and forth. What do I get out of this? What do you get out of this?
You naturally think that way.
Yeah, it's a very difficult way to manage a relationship like that, at least in the short term. Over time, yeah, I think things work out evenly in the end, kind of, right? Because we are over time reciprocating species. If we've seen enough of certain behavior and we take advantage of it, we begin to feel somewhat conscious and, well, maybe I should do the same. Okay. But it's not something that in the short term you can expect the other person can do.
In the long term.
Right. And so if you think about, well, what kind of topic would be a good thing to talk about? When I heard you saying that, well, my life is not that interesting. Boxing, video game. Well, they're interesting. Why is that not interesting? Maybe you think they don't interest in that. They don't want to be interested in that. Or you don't think they will be interested in that. And therefore you just automatically filter those out. But those are the things that you will be most enthusiastically talking about if they invited you. You couldn't stop. You just be right. But you're afraid that you're going to lose them after the first two sentences.
True.
They will be saying, oh, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? And you get tired of explaining. And he said, okay, don't worry about it. Okay. Happens all the time.
Well, it's sort of fun. Oh, sorry, please.
No.
Interrupt you. No, I'm just saying, yes, it feels like something that is you learn since young, like I mean, when I'm younger, like the dinner table that I was in, oftentimes are quite focused on, like you say, the management stuff, the house, homework, how you're doing at school, obviously.
Yeah.
And things that are sort of game related, and which I do not blame my family for that, but it was more or less a taboo or not allowed to talk about things that and YouTube
Yeah.
wasn't a thing before, so
Right.
when we say game, I mean hide and seek that I play in the playground with my friends, right? So that other than like this happening, that happening, which sometimes it doesn't, most of the time it doesn't, it's not very well received. Later you sort of learn that it's not just you shouldn't share it because no one want to hear that. And because of that, I maybe because of that, I learned to be a bit scared of sharing my own interests. It's because like you sort of have this innate feeling of like, well, yeah, just because you're interested, no one needs to be hearing that. Which is I would say a common sentiment, right? And that sort of kills, maybe like you say, that's a reason why I'm not sharing my own hobby, which like you say, when I actually look at, I can get into a Mike Tyson fight and be quite interested at it, right? Know how he bob around, how he's not unhittable like machine. Like I already feeling like it's coming in. The moment I started, it's like string is starting. But let's drag that in first. But like the technicality of the topic, the difficulty of it, and then there's also the idea that the other person might not be as interested, or maybe it's just maybe the environment or who you're speaking to have a reputation of not liking to hear it, which, just as I say, I do sometimes stop topics I don't want to hear.
Right.
Makes the dinner table a much more complicated place than what I would like it to be, or what you describe even, at least the ideal version of it. But either way, we should,
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to put it all on yourself and obligate yourself to make things happen for other people, right? I think that's far too big
of a duty,
call for anyone, right?
Yeah.
So you do your bit, you do the best you can, and if you can't help, well, at least don't mess it up.
Don't be the downer.
Be a neutral, positive force, right? To contribute to the harmony. And if you're there, like most of the time, I think that's a good result, right?
True.
But there is another thing that I could suggest that generally works in terms of topics and direction of where those topics heads. And I go by demographics. Don't know whether I've told you, but 0 to 30, you talk to them about the future. 30 to 60, you talk about the present. 60 and beyond, you talk about their past.
Okay.
Because consciously, the life stages has a lot to do with their current focus. So when you're young, your anxiety is about the unknown, the future. When you're living it, it's about making it happen. When you're over it, you're thinking about, oh, I remember those days when I was doing this and you were that young and
your time.
Right. So do you want them to talk? Ask them about the things that occupies their current focus. Then they're more likely to be interested to talk about it because they have the most category of things active in that era of time. And then you just lay it out in the open. Okay. You don't restrict the category of things because are you really interested in learning? Are you really interested in understanding this person? This is a prerequisite. If you're not interested to under the person, that's okay. Don't pretend. Then just eat your dinner and whatever they say, 1 year in, 1 year out, you don't need to respond, but no need to be rude. Don't stop them. Let them talk. Finish your dinner quickly and then say goodbye. I mean, if that's really what you want to do, right? So neutral, positive. Don't show your face. Don't blacken your face and roll your eyes and say, "Hey, we go again."
Okay, go again.
Don't try to do those things to make things worse. And there are those times in which case you might have to just bite your tongue a little bit and then, just grind through that half an hour or 45 minutes of whatever, okay, and survive through it. But there are the times that you can. There are the times that you can explore, and if you are interested, I think you'd find that most people will respond to your invitation about talking about. Oh, so right now, so Anson, what's your plan? I mean, do you have like a 1 year plan, 2 year plan? What kind of things do you be thinking about if you're doing what you're doing? And do you have some sort of a bottom line as to what you want to get done? And so if I ask you those questions, you may not have an answer, but you probably will be interested in having that conversation, in thinking about the things with me, right? But if you talk to your parent, you might say something like, so what was it like when you were at my age? What was life then? What do you think about when you're 25? They're going to give you an earful.
Oh.
Well, if you're able to stay with them, it's the best conversation. They're going to love you for that, as long as you stay and you just nod your head, listen.
Ask them for their opinions and stuff. Yeah.
How often do you actively seek their pearls of wisdom instead of them imposing on you, even if you don't want it, right? Imagine one day you ask them the question like you asked me a question with the same attitude. What do you think they would react? How do you think they're going to react? They think, thank God, I thought you never asked. Let me tell you.
No, it's just me. Like that's actually a very apparent when especially after I move away from home. Like when I start living outside and the dinner table with my mom become occasional. And so whenever I go back home, I'm sort of prepared. So I have my mind prepared. Like I'm there to communicate with my mom. And what my mom want to do is talk about what she think of, how good of buyer she is in terms of like grocery, like how always like praising like her food, how it's better than like most other restaurant outside, and also like her rent on her students, like which is what she want to talk about, right? And whenever I go back, I would listen to that, and I've actually observed that they're quite happy about it. And for my stepdad, it's like all about his opinion on how life and earth and different mystic force they do believe in that work. But you know what? Whatever makes them happy, it does makes the dinner table a lot more enjoying. Like the first time I do it, like before whenever I go home, dinner is around half an hour, 45 minutes at most, depends on like what meals we're having. Which is a good time already, I would think. But it still feels a little bit forced. But now when I go home, it naturally goes into 2-3 hour conversation that I always have to have an alarm clock. Look, have to go home now, otherwise you can't work tomorrow. That changes is so apparent. And what I want to say is that like I do think like having the intention to listen, to understand what the other person wants to share, it changes the table. But that also means that like I guess it must be hard for you to communicate with, or for your kid at least, because then you would always have to be the one who actually have to listen to him, right? I wouldn't assume that you expect him to be the one who lead the conversation or to have the skills to listen to what you have to say. I assume that would be the dynamic.
Yeah, but initially I do feel that it was hard.
Really?
But I look at myself and I said, well, what do you do for a living? Aren't you supposed to be doing this for a living? Isn't it exactly what you're supposed to be good at doing this? So show me if you're that good. Can you get your son to talk to you?
So you make it a challenge for yourself, you're saying?
Well, it's at least a question. It hasn't been a challenge. And it's a question I want to know the answer to. So I started to try different things. And here's what I found, which forms the basis of what I told you today. There was a long period of time, probably for the first of his 11 years, that we hardly talked because I was traveling so much for my work, and I don't really care about his homework because it's boring. So my wife would look after all of that. He sleeps with him, he bathes him, he changes clothes, he put his socks on, go to school thing. So his life revolved around her. And I'm okay with it because I was a little bit detached, and I'm not the kind of father that requires constant smothering to make my fatherhood mean something to me. It occurred to me early on in my mind that there would be a time when this guy needs me, and I'll be there for him when that time comes. It may not be now. Right now, he enjoys the smothering. There's 3 women in my household: my helper, my mother, and my wife. One young single male.
Yeah.
You're
You
gonna-
imagine the
you-
love he's getting.
Imagine the smothering, all the you know, all the things that he's going to get, not because he deserves it, but because the female feel good about giving it to him. Feel good about themselves as motherly loves and grandmotherly love and all of that stuff. And it has certain consequences, which is showing up now. But as I look back, would I have stopped them from doing it? Is it worth an argument? I used to have a question about that. I no longer have the question. If these people want to enjoy themselves with this guy in this way, who am I to stop them? If he likes that treatment, who am I to stop him? Why is my standard better and more relevant than their standards? No one gave me that right last time I looked, right? I'm just another guy on earth, 1 out of 7.8 billion. I don't even own this guy. I help contribute, make him, yes. But once he's onto this earth, I think he deserves to have some degree of personal sovereignty over what he chooses to do, as long as it's not below certain lines. So because of that, I had very little, understanding of what he does and what he likes. And because he doesn't talk much, his manner is something yet to be desired. But I'm slowly changing that because of social.
11 years of age.
Yeah. And so I was struggling to sustain a conversation. And there are times that when I need to teach him something, for example, manners or certain ways of conducting his daily lives, that he would just not have any time for me, and he would just go to his room and shut his door. And I would never force the door to open, talk to him, because I know it's kind of like pointless. And then one day I said, look, how can I talk to this guy and teach him anything if he doesn't even want to be in my presence? It's physically impossible. So maybe my first port of call is not how can I talk to him? It's how to make sure he does not run away from me in my presence, as a very basic, humble requirement. And so, okay, I imagine if I were that guy, if every time someone like me come along is to say, you should do this, I would run away too.
Yeah.
So next time I came around, I don't. It's a pleasant surprise. Okay. He was playing a game. I sit beside him, quietly observing. He said, what are you doing here? I said, oh, just looking at what you're doing. Now, he might not speak a lot, but he's a very mellow guy, in a lot of other ways. He doesn't mind if you're there, if you don't get in his way. Okay. So I watch his game, watch it for a while, left. And then some other time, I would ask him, so why do you like the game so much? And he was blah, 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 because of this and so. And then I would use my skill. So how do I develop a conversation with someone? I ask him a question. He gave me some keywords. I catch those keywords. I develop the next question. I was I was doing my coaching thing on him without telling him. Right.
Finally, years of training.
Right. He's like, okay, I'm getting a head start here.
Uh-huh.
So he was telling me the weapons. He was telling me the scoring system. He was telling me this and telling me that. And after that, I found out that he would occasionally come into my room, uninvited, lie on the bed, and start mumbling these things. Oh, today the game was so hard. He was monologuing. He wasn't asking for my opinion. He didn't give me space even to talk.
Okay.
He just would come in and monologue. Yeah. Half an hour, 45 minutes, even an hour. That guy can just talk, I'm telling you. Right? You wouldn't think that he could talk, but he can, beyond your belief. And so I came to this realization. The shyest people, those people who are most introverted, has the most extroverted side if you hit the right button. You just got to find the button. More importantly, maybe you need to let the button emerge and observe. There will be a time. Everybody has that time when the right moment comes. So that's what you want to talk about. Gotcha. So from now on, if I want to have a conversation, I start with that. There's always a willingness to meet me where he wants to be. But once I started, I warmed him up. I said, oh, by the way, that's my time now. Okay. By the way, hey, you remember this? Yeah, okay. So I give him 90% of the time to talk about what he wants to talk about in exchange for 10% of what I want to talk about. But that's all I need. So instead of giving him volume density, I give him bite-sized bits.
That would actually listen.
Bang, bang, bang. Get one. You can handle one, right? Okay, I'll give you one. Okay. Tomorrow, try to, okay, no, still one. Okay, I'll give you another one. Okay, so how consistently can you do it? Do you get frustrated by it? And recently, I had a big breakthrough. He has never eaten anything green ever since he grew up.
Okay.
And I'm able to get him to eat something green every single time now. Because he was having, there were times when he was having stomach ache and some constipation. And I explained to him how the digestive system worked. And I said, look, dude, I'm just care about you, right? So I don't want you to have to go to hospital after this. Not hugely scary, but it's a possibility. Right?
Yeah.
I said, look, why don't you try this? On a regular basis, do this and this. And he's like, okay, fine. So all of this because he was not negative to me in the first place, that I'm able to get something in his head that he does not resist by default. Now, the mother has the exact opposite problem. Because the only thing the mother talks to him about is that, hey, time's up, stop your game. Like the worst thing that you can tell him about is his game. That's the only thing he cares about. You can talk to him about just about anything else and he'll say, okay, maybe yes, maybe no. Stop my game, no. Right? This is like the red line, the red line, right? Yeah. And she just keep pressing the red line every day, a few times a day. Then he told me, he said, in my Chinese composition, I'm going to write, I hate her and I like you. And I'm going to show her what I write. I said, no, don't do that. Please don't do that.
Yeah, come on.
Please don't press the nuclear button.
Don't
not necessary.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? You don't want that to play.
Yeah. So in his mind, it's a very simple way of, okay, I don't ask for much. I only want my games. And I do the minimum that you ask me to do. What more do you want me to do? Why are you giving me all this hard time? And I can recall back to a moment when I was kind of his age, the things that I want to do and the things that I don't want to do. Who likes school at that age or any age?
Any age.
Right? Or any age, right?
Up until you learn to learn, it's very hard to like school.
Yeah, I don't like school, but I love learning now. I still don't love school, but I
Right.
love to learn. That's a
Mhm.
big difference. So it's not the content, it's the delivery, it's the
Mm.
system, it's the institution, it's the way they make you feel.
Last thing, the most important, I feel like. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but yeah, so that's, talking about my son, I made this breakthrough because when I self-introspect, and I said, well, where do I start? It is a place so humble that is scary. I just want him not to run away from it. Okay. That's where I have to start.
True.
So nowhere is too low, is what I'm saying. Where to
Mm.
start. If you truly want to develop a relationship, you got to meet them where they can.
Yeah. I do think that relationship building at the end of the day. I feel like why your son listened to you more. Like if I were to make an analysis, right? Not a parent, not claiming that I have any knowledge on this either. But from what I hear, the story seems like because you are his friend now, and obviously he would listen to his friend more than his enemy, which is now unfortunately the mother. I go through that stage. I hated my mom too when I grow up because she's the one who disciplined me, right? I mean, I understand when you're a kid feel like, must feel like, but at the end of the day, it's about you building that friendship with him, and now the Kevin's home education system is complete, right? You have the stick, which is your wife, and then you have the carrot, which is you. And when necessary, you can always just go in and, give your advice as a friend, which is at the very least, I think is an effective system to educate a kid, isn't it? To think that like both forces are driving to his greatness.
I
Maybe
don't think
we'll.
even, I don't think the stick is not really working.
Okay.
And the carrot is not really meant to be a carrot. So everybody has a way of their being, right?
Of course,
Is how
yeah.
would I like to describe that. So my wife, the way she express herself, okay, is different, in front of different people.
Of course.
If she treat my son like she would treat the staff in the office, my son would be her best friend.
Hmm.
Now, would I think that she's a pussycat in the office being an MD? I doubt it.
Hmm.
But she knows in the office what is appropriate behavior to get the best out of people.
Hmm.
And I actually once asked her, because I now have a ritual with her.
Hmm.
For a long time, we kind of grew apart and we don't do anything together just by two of us anymore.
Hmm.
And I just found out the best way, which is we go for a walk after dinner, just downstairs. Okay. 20 minutes, but I do it every day. It's an atomic habit. Okay. And in that 20 minutes, we talk about things because there's nothing else to do. There's no phones, there's no TV, there's no sun. It's just, a nice little loop around our area with some, vegetation.
Like
Nice.
bonding. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we catch up with what is happening in each other's life and something interesting, current affairs or whatever. And then we laugh and joke a little bit. Okay. And it kind of, these are the seasoning. These are the necessary salt and pepper that comes in small dosages that makes the meal. I mean, you're a cook, you should know it, right? Without the salt and pepper, okay, I can eat it, but it's so much better with
essential ingredients.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Salt and pepper doesn't cost much, nor are they anything extraordinary, but the mere presence of them makes the meal. And you notice it when it's absent.
It defines a quality of a meal.
Yeah.
Yes.
The right dosage.
The right dosage. Yes.
Right. So, so what I mean by that is that if she uses the same protocol at work to talk to my son and treat him like an adult, I would not have been a competition. There is no way that I could win the competition because she is so far ahead in everything else
In terms of
in
time.
terms of
and,
involvement in his time, right? And so I think what she had unfortunately, couldn't do out of her own lack of willingness and habit is that she thinks she's a mother. And a son is forever a son and a baby. Well, he doesn't think that. He thinks that, well, I now know enough things. I can do a number of things. I'm stronger, right?
Yeah.
So he has changed. He has grown. She hasn't caught up with his self-image of who he thinks he is. He deserved to be treated. He thinks he deserved to be treated just like this. So at a very earlier age, let's say when 2-3 years ago, I started talking to him and say, look, you're grown up now. I'm going to treat you like a grown up, okay? Now, as a grown up, we don't yell at each other. Do you agree? And so there are many times in the beginning that he still yelled at me. I said, okay, before we can continue, I just need to ask you one question. Would you like me to yell at you? And he would not look at me. And he would not answer me. I'll ask him again, and I asked him 3 times. Would you like me to yell at you? He said, no. I said, okay. Would you please not yell at me then? He said, okay. And then, see, I'm not here to dominate the conversation. I'm here to create rules that we both like. And I ask you for permission. It's okay if you want a conversation to be yelling at each other, but you have to give me the same permission. To be fair. He knows he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Well, why should I put up with it on one side? What do I owe you? To be fair. Now, if you appeal to someone on the basis of fairness, it's a much higher chance that you're going to reach an agreement. You don't like something to happen, you ask for permission. Well, can I do that thing too? I said, no. Okay, well, would you mind not doing it? And then they'll grudgingly squeeze with a cotton pair of hands. Okay.
Well,
you slowly change them, but
True.
you will change them because you ask for permission. They're not going to give you the permission. You know it. They know it. But you still ask. Very polite. What can she do? Nothing. Grudgingly, okay, all right, I see a point. Next time she break it again, ask the permission again. Would you like me to yell at you now? Well, if not, would you please not do that?
I think this is one of those things that is not just education, it's useful when you're talk to your girlfriend or boyfriend too.
Or anyone.
Or anyone really. As for setting up ground rules by
exactly
prompting,
by asking permission.
By asking permission, yes.
Yes. You always want to give that authority to them because people like to have that authority, right? Okay,
I
well, I'm going to give you.
make a decision. Yeah.
You make a decision. How nasty do you want me to be? Please tell me.
This is always the case. Well, a little bit status report. I'm a little bit tired now because like a 4-5 hour conversation.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, but I think let me just stop recording now.
Sure.